looking around the room, I also saw people that we're going to be publishing in the future, whether that's Rosie, whether that's Martin or Astra, or, oh gosh, David! Sorry, David, I knew there was... So thank you. Next is Mr. Matthew Turner.
So this is an extract from other rooms, which you can find at the back. And it's about kind of situations that people might find themselves in, or might feel like they're still, but still moving. There's not a true story. Caveat. I wanted the passive order the person often craves after experiencing something traumatic. So I was sat on a National Express bus, progressing slowly along the motorway towards London. On arrival, I planned to walk a perfectly straight line, roughly 10 miles of the prime meridian, from one marker at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich to another at Pole Hill, which sits on the border between Greater London and Essex. I would spend the whole day subsumed and expunged by cartography, still moving, as my path wouldn't deviate from 0 degrees longitude. I would walk not to delineate a route or a line in the landscape, but to register an unmovement, one that wouldn't highlight the route's presence in the world of experience, rather carve out its absence. Although perhaps a hallucination of a design, I'd spend the day at ground zero, flatlined at 0 degrees. As the bus starts to move at a less frustrating speed, I watch a screen positioned in the middle of an aisle, fixed to the ceiling. The film functions as a rear-view mirror, showing the motorway disappearing behind us, and due to the road and the landscape's generic and monotonous nature, the views seen through the coach's windscreen and the one stretching backwards look identical. As I see London emerge in the distance, the two views make me feel as though I'm stuck in some kind of strange, inertial vertigo between moving forwards and moving backwards at apparently the same speed. I had attended my grandmother's funeral that morning at a large church in the Midlands. Down the passage we did not take, intoned the priest, as I grasped the silver plastic handle on the coffin with my left hand, and my arm stretched across my eyes, and my other hand placed under. I couldn't see my own, so I looked across to the other pallbearer's feet to judge the path we would take. We carried the coffin 26 steps across the back of the church, equal to the 20-metre width my sharp, ruler-drawn line marking the route of the meridian would be if I scaled it from the map scale to 1:1. Deepening my detachment, I imagined the 20-metre dusty charcoal shadow it would cast over the landscape, and the sinuous line I would have raised for it with my feet, an idea that merged with the priest continuing towards the door we never opened, bodiless and reverberating all around the church. We turned right and began to walk 40 straight steps towards the altar, 23,000 less steps than it would take me to complete the walk between the two meridian markers. Arriving at London Victoria, I alight from the coach and head towards the first cafe I spot. Its automatic door slowly starts to open away from me as I approach, at the same speed as my steps, meaning my reflection in its morning clean glass doesn't become larger, but rather retains its size as I get closer. Despite my continuing movements, for a moment I'm an inert impression on a reflective shroud instead of a body in full motion. Once inside, I glance up at the menu. "Just a cup of tea, please," I say to the waitress, and sitting down at a table by the window, I take out my phone. In equilibrium with the barista's trajectory from her counter, my tea arrives as I, using Google Maps, zoom in on the barely decipherable and pixelated meridian line marker in Greenwich. The walk up the hill towards it looks strenuous, but once there, in my mind, I feel a complete lack of physical exertion. In video games, it is often more efficient for the scenery to move around the protagonist, instead of allowing them to move freely through a fictional landscape. The lead of any video game explores the world by staying resolutely still, ensnared in the deception of locomotion. My own actions feel clunky and glitched, like they have lost a dimension, in the same vein as the video game character, or more specifically, how on the meridian my progress forward would be cartographically measured. However, those to the side, east and west, wouldn't deviate from zero. A dimension of perception and movement severed or compressed into the two-dimensional traversals of a reflection. I felt as though I was stood in the exact same spot as when I'd been informed of my grandmother's death. Since then, I had stayed static, and the landscape had moved on without me, in the manner of a train for which I was late, leaving the station and me behind in its wake. It was reminiscent of a shock I had once received when sitting beside a window. A bird had knocked itself out in full flight against the outer surface of the glass pane, in which a mirrored sky presented a simulation of continued space.